Masashika is an ugly loser otaku until the most popular girl in school falls in love with him. But she isn't just any popular girl. She is so popular that all the students stare at her, envying the ground she walks on. One morning, Walmart Timothy Chalamet walks up to her thinking his $2 haircut is enough to raise her up, but Alia rejects him immediately. The idiot tries to save face by switching tactics to getting her number. However, Alia shatters his self-worth and tells him she has zero interest in him, leaving him speechless. The rest of the school lose any hope of bagging her since she just roasted the hell out of the most coveted boy in school. Later, Alia arrives in class and finds Masashika catching up on his sleep, so she kicks the moron awake and asks if he was up all night watching anime again. He admits to the allegations but explains that he had something important to do after watching. Alia thinks he was on some Twitter thread, but it turned out that the virgin loser was staying up watching anime recaps. Alia calls him insane, but Masashika insists that if it's for the culture, he'll gladly be put in straitjackets. She then stares as he yawns wide enough to accommodate an eggplant. Then she says something in Russian. He asks what it was, and she says it means he looks pathetic. Their first period is chemistry, something these two have plenty of, and when Masashika realizes he forgot to bring his textbook, he joins tables with Alia to share hers. While the teacher drones on, Masashika fights to stay awake, but when he loses, Alia sticks him with her pen, causing him to raise his hand. The teacher asks what the answer is, so Masashika looks to Alia for help. She points him to an answer and Masashika confidently repeats it, but he ends up being dead wrong. The teacher then turns to Alia to bail him out, and she instantly gives up the correct answer. Masashika can't believe the betrayal and asks why she would throw him under the bus like that. Alia claims she was pointing out the question number, but Masashika just knows she's full of shit, especially with that evil smile. Suddenly she repeats that word in Russian, which catches Masashika off guard. When he asks what she said, she calls him stupid, but Masashika has a secret. He's been able to understand her Russian this entire time, and she was actually calling him a cutie. This rocks his whole world, trying to figure out what she means, but she continues to play dumb. He's able to understand her since he'd played with a Russian girl when he was a kid, but he never thought he'd find himself being rizzed up by a Russian baddie who doesn't know he can understand her. If he admitted he knew, she'd probably die of embarrassment, and he can't afford funeral expenses. Later, Alia catches Masashika messing with his phone and reminds him it's forbidden to use it unless it's an emergency. But he just ignores her. Frustrated, Alia grabs the phone to see what this filthy degenerate is up to anyway. When she sees the goddess of the moon with silver hair, she hands the phone back annoyed. Then she switches to Russian and says her hair is silver too and calls him a cheater. Masashika catches that and starts to glitch, but when he asks what she said, she calls him a game junkie. The airhead immediately loses focus and starts explaining how he's not a true junkie since he doesn't have his own Twitch stream yet. Alia simply looks away, realizing there's no hope for him. Later, Masashika has lunch with his friends when they notice the student council walk in. Alia, the treasurer, Yuki, the spokesperson, and Maria, the secretary and Alia's sister. The boys agree that the Kujo sisters are smoking hot, but Maria turns down everyone who asks her out, saying she's dating someone already. Alia says Takeshi's got no shot with her since his head is shaped like a doorknob, so Takeshi calls him out on being full of it just because he's friends with Alia. Meanwhile, the girls look around for a place to sit, and when Yuki spots Masashika's uninterested look, she asks if they can sit with them. The boys agree, so the girls join them and Yuki notices Masashika got ramen just like her. However, when she realizes the food tastes like battery acid, she suggests bringing it up with the student council. Masashika warns her not to bring personal preferences into admin matters, but she fondly tells him she's only joking. At that moment, Alia looks at Yuki like she's some shit stain and asks if they're friends. Yuki explains that they've known each other since childhood, since they went to the same preschool. When Masashika asks if the girls are friends too, Yuki says she'd like to be, but Alia warns her that being friends with her isn't exactly fun. At that point, the boys decide to take their lunch elsewhere, and Takeshi explains the girls are just too shiny for their virgin eyes. Once the dead weight has been dropped, Yuki inches close to Masashika and asks if he's considered her idea of joining the student council, but Masashika says he would rather watch that 2010 Airbender movie we don't talk about. Yuki tells Alia that Masashika used to be her vice president back in middle school, and he's very capable, so Alia switches to Russian and says she doesn't have to tell her that. Later, Yuki says her goodbyes and Alia says she's surprised any girl would want to be friends with him. Masashika points out that she's his friend, which surprises Alia, who agrees and suddenly walks away, leaving Masashika confused. Later, Masashika dreams of the good old days when he used to play with a blonde Russian girl. When he wakes up, he remembers how he was such a simp that he studied Russian just to talk to her, yet he doesn't remember her name. The next morning, Masashika goes to class early and tidies up before everyone else arrives. Alia is the first show up and thinks hell must have frozen over for his bum ass to have woken up early. Masashika notices the dirt on her socks and asks if she stepped in a puddle, but she sits down and explains that she got splashed with mud by a passing truck. She suddenly changes the subject and asks if he'll join the student council after all, but he insists that he'd rather swallow nails. Alia tries to ask something else, but gets embarrassed and tells him to forget it. She then begins to remove her socks, which makes Masashika weak in the knees. When Alia sees how shy he is, she gets a cultured idea and tells Masashika to get her spare sock from her locker. Masashika reluctantly agrees, but when she tells him to put it on her, he tries to chicken out, but she says it would be a nice treat for him for helping her get it. Alia switches to Russian and says it's for her too, and at this point, Masashika starts wondering if she's just using him to release her stress or something. When he asks what she says she called him a coward, so Masashika grabs her foot and decides to do as she's asked. Alia starts freaking out, saying she wasn't ready yet, but Masashika tells her to stop squirming so he can get it in. However, he accidentally touches her in her restricted area, so she immediately kicks him in the face and gives him a peek of heaven in the process. The man goes down, but it was worth the treat. Later, Alia gives him cold shoulder, so he approaches her and tries to apologize, but she calls him a leg fetish scum in Russian. She then says she's not mad at him and apologizes for kicking him, but when she tries to see if he's okay, he deflects and thanks her for giving him a preview of the promised Everland. Alia is beyond embarrassed and decks him. Then she turns to run away while he chases after her. They run around school for a while, but 10 minutes later, she finally gives in. Masashika apologizes for taking it too far and offers her favorite drink as a peace offering. Alia is touched that she noticed and switches to Russian to ask if he wants a sip. Masashika freezes when he realizes she wants to indirectly kiss him, but he chickens out and pretends not to know what that means. As usual, she changes the translation and laughs to herself, thinking he doesn't understand a word she's saying. Some days later, Masashika meets up with Yuki in a storage space, and when the two start goofing off, Alia pops out and laments about being the third wheel. The girls apparently need help sorting out the storage room, so Masashika starts by bringing down some board games, which cues Yuki to brag about her last win. Alia tells the cringy couple to get back to work, then switches to Russian to wish she'd get some attention too. Masashika shivers on the spot as Alia continues to beg for him to come, while Alia thinks she's really being slick. Afterward, they head to the student council office, where the president comes in and introduces himself as Kenzaki, saying he's heard a lot about him. Masashika looks at him like an unfinished Mappa project, and thinks it's no wonder he's the president. However, when he tries to leave, Kenzaki insists on buying him dinner to show his appreciation. Masashika tries to decline, but Yuki tells him he should accept since he's only going home to meet tumbleweeds. Kenzaki wonders how Yuki could possibly know what Masashika will meet at home, but Yuki simply says they go way back. Kenzaki then invites the girls to dinner with them, and they accept. At dinner, Kenzaki praises the group for finishing their task so quickly, so Yuki starts hyping Masashika up as the reason why. Kenzaki asks him if he'd like to join the student council, but Masashika declines once again, saying he'd rather step on a Lego. Kenzaki tries convincing him by saying it'll greatly improve his recommendation, but Masashika only cares about recommending a manga held jizz to that night. Yuki adds to the pestering, so Masashika asks why she even needs him when she's a shoo-in to win, but Kenzaki reveals that's not true, especially since Alia is planning to run too. This surprises Masashika, but Alia confirms that she'll be running for president too. After dinner, Kenzaki suggests Masashika walk Alia home while he takes care of Yuki, so they split up. Alia seems particularly cold to Masashika, and when she reaches her stop, she leaves without her usual Russian simping. Masashika arrives at home and can immediately tell he's not alone. Inside, Yuki casually relaxes on the couch, so he asks what she's doing there, but she ignores him and reads through her favorite manga, hoping its main couple is from Alabama. Masashika calls her out on pretending to be childhood friends in school, but Yuki insists that being siblings doesn't contradict that. They then refocus on the cultured comic she's reading as she demonstrates that otakus aren't born, they're made. The next morning, Masashika wakes up to find Yuki on top of him, but he tells her he's not interested in going Targaryen with her. Later, they head to the mall together, and Yuki checks out some clothes while Masashika feels his lungs closing when he sees the price tag. While they shop, Masashika asks Yuki if she's also noticed a silver something at the corner of his eye, so Yuki says that she's way ahead of him and noticed the peeping Tom a while ago. Masashika wonders how to deal with the situation delicately, but Yuki doesn't give a shit and just walks right up to Alia. Alia tries to play it cool and claims that she'd only seen them a few moments ago, but of course, no one buys it. Yuki tries to invite Alia to lunch with them, but when Masashika tries to stop her, Alia wonders what the big deal is. Yuki explains it's a spicy food joint and tells her not to come if she can't handle it. But Masashika tries to be honest and warns her that it's like eating the bomb from hot ones. Alia insists that she'll go, ignoring Masashika's warnings, and moments later, she stands before the gates of hell, looking like she died while doing meth. Alia starts to have second thoughts till Yuki starts running her mouth, making her double down. When they head in, Yuki explains what flavor of hell awaits her in each of their dishes, so Masashika tries to save her by going for the mildest option on the menu. The girls decide to go with his order too, and while they wait, Alia points out how boyish Yuki looks for a change. Yuki informs her that she was in bed with Masashika that morning, causing him to spit his drink, while the virgins in the restaurant eavesdrop on what it's like to get some action. Alia looks to Masashika for an explanation, but what he says sounds the same as saying she slipped and fell into bed with him. Finally, their order for 3 pools of blood arrives, and just the sight alone makes Alia jump. However, not one to back down from a challenge, she pulls out the noodles and starts to eat. Suddenly, the spices hit her like truck cumin's distant cousin. But when Masashika tries to ask if she's seen double yet, she insists that she's fine. She starts crying as she begs for help in Russian, but every time Masashika tries to help, she refuses. Just then, Yuki, who's no better than the devil, offers her a spice to make her food even hotter. Masashika realizes Yuki's doing this on purpose and tries to rescue Alia, but the idiot refuses and pours some of it in. When she takes a bite, she screams Bloody Mary and they end up outside. Masashika says Yuki went off to buy something, and it's just 2 of them now, so he asks if she wants some ice cream. Alia finally cools off when Masashika suddenly asks her why she wants to be student council president. Alia says she doesn't need a reason to aim higher, so Masashika asks if she has a running mate. She says she doesn't need one and would probably ask a random stranger just cause of the rules, but when she switches to Russian, she wishes he would run with her. This reminds Masashika of a time when he watched a girl ugly cry over losing the elections, making him feel bad. Alia asks if he's got any plans after that, and Masashika says he doesn't, and Yuki won't be back for a while, so Alia asks him to follow her shopping. Yuki says it would imply a close relationship between them, but when he realizes that Alia doesn't have many friends thanks to her prickly Miss Perfect attitude, he decides to pity the silver tsundere wannabe. They head to the store and Alia wonders why Masashika is being so nice to her, then gets mad when she thinks it's because he expects her to lose the presidency. She heads to the changing stalls angrily and intends to blow him away with her fashion sense, but before she starts stripping, she realizes otakus have active imaginations, so she tells him to move farther away so he doesn't hear the sounds. Relieved, she starts giving Patreon subscribers some content, then she throws on a cute outfit to show him. Suddenly, she wonders what she'd do if he has no reaction at all. When she opens the curtain, Masashika tells her she looks great, and even puts effort into the compliment, unlike you do when your girlfriend asks if she looks fat. Alia draws the curtain and proceeds to have a heart attack, while Masashika simultaneously experiences liver failure from the embarrassment. Alia wonders if he's used to giving compliments because of that bitch-faced Yuki, so she decides to try a boyish outfit like her. Again, Masashika makes her turn red when he tells her she looks cool. Alia tries on outfit after outfit after outfit, just to milk compliments from Masashika, who's probably dying inside. This time she decides to go with something risky, and maybe tease Masashika with some skin. However, when she opens up to show him, she finds Yuki standing there in a blank stare from Masashika. Alia switches to Russian and wishes she could disappear, so Masashika translates for Yuki, who calls her a big baby. Later on the train, Alia wonders who would win between Madara and Satama, but snaps out of it when Masashika and Yuki start to say their goodbyes. When they leave, she starts freaking out about that skimpy skirt she wore when something more important hits her, and she wonders why they both got off at the same station. Afterward, Alia heads home where her sister Maria welcomes her. Maria can tell Alia's looking kind of emo for a change, so she asks what's wrong. Alia tells her about Masashika and his childhood friend, making Maria happy that a boy could finally break through that vibranium heart of hers. Alia tries to play it off, but Maria asks her point blank if she likes Masashika. Alia deflects and insists they're just friends, so Maria asks how that's possible since he's an indifferent slacker, which Alia hates. Well, it all started 6 years ago in Russia when Alia's class was split into groups for a class project where the winners would get a prize. Alia was excited to do her part and went all the way into town to interview her subject study, but when she returned to school, she realized no one else seemed to give a shit. Alia tried to motivate the group so they could win, but those future couch potatoes weren't having any of it. When they saw Alia had written an entire dissertation for the assignment, they had to tell her to chill cause she was doing too much. Eventually a fight broke out and Alia was left all alone to finish that Loki master's degree. When the moment of truth came, another group won the prize and Alia was broken up about losing. On her way home, she blamed herself for expecting anyone to be as driven as she was, so she decided to start her woke feminist arc. Years later, she transferred into the prestigious Japanese school, where she met the deadbeat loser sleeping beside her. They exchanged introductions, but from one period to the next, Aliyah could see Masashika was an S-tier slacker, who probably got exhausted from breathing. However, she wasn't surprised, since she'd seen this type of behavior before. When the school festival rolled around, the kids all had different tasks to do, so Aliyah shouldered hers alone. Some girls tried to get her to relax since it was just a school festival, but Aliyah was determined to put her all into it. She pricked herself over and over, but still insisted on finishing. Masashika suddenly bust in, knowing Aliyah would be working herself to death. He advised her to go home, assuring her that everyone would pitch in the next day, but she insisted on staying. That's when he showed her a permission slip for the handicrafts club to stay in school and assist them, which shocked Aliyah, who wondered how he arranged it. Masashika explained his methods and told her there was no point in doing it alone. But this ticked Aliyah off, as she didn't understand what was so wrong with taking the festival seriously. She gave one of those eye-rolling speeches about not compromising on quality, and insisted there was nothing wrong with working so hard, since no one else cared as much. Masashika reminded her that the whole point of festival attractions is to work together, so she should be using the emotional blackmail to guilt-trip the others into working hard with her instead. However, when he sees he's at risk of receiving another speech, he apologizes and appreciates all her efforts. Aliyah finally agrees to head home, but she wonders what Masashika's deal is. The next day, the boys really stepped up to the plate, to Aliyah's surprise. Not only do they get their shit done, but everyone has fun doing it, including Aliyah. So when the school festival starts, it goes off without a hitch. Aliyah finds Masashika sitting alone at the after party and decides to join him. He asks if she's not joining in on the dancing, cause she has 2 left feet. Aliyah assures him her feet can do things he'd only ever seen on incognito mode, but she refused to dance with her many admirers. Masashika calls it a typical ice princess response, and it's apparently the first time she'd heard the nickname. Aliyah looks annoyed by the name and explains that the princess part makes her sound like she's some silver spoon nepo baby. She can't exactly help it, but she's never coasted by based on daddy's name alone, so she hates it when her efforts get ignored in favor of her birth. Masashika understands and agrees not to call her the name, which pleasantly surprises Aliyah. She thanks him for getting through her thick skull so she could enjoy the festival with everyone else, and apologizes for hitting him with that preachy speech about hope. Masashika tells her it's fine, but Aliyah insists on repaying him in a tangible way and asks what he wants. Masashika gives it some thought and asks her if she's got a real nickname. When she tells him it's Aliyah, he asks for permission to call her that. She asks what's in it for him, so he basically says he'll have bragging rights for being chummy with the class idol and thanks her for the honor. Just then, the smell of desperation clogs the air as the Aliyah fan club shows up to ask her to dance. The boys start arguing over who should get the first dance and even invade her personal space to convince her. Aliyah gets overwhelmed by the raging simp body sprays, so Masashika grabs her hand and tells the boys she's already taken. Aliyah's heart almost shoots out of her southward cheeks as she stares at Masashika in surprise. Masashika challenges her to see how fast she can pick up the dance, and she gladly takes him up on his offer. From then on, Masashika returned to being the sloth prince, so Aliyah began showering him with venomous violations, but deep down, she'd officially been rizzed up. In the present, Maria praises their cute love story, while Aliyah insists that it's not like that since they're merely friends. However, Maria knows a friends to lovers trope when she sees one, since she has experience with her mystery locket lover. Aliyah admits that Masashika does pull through when it counts, while Maria starts gushing about her sotkum, making Aliyah want to barf. The next day, Masashika arrives at the student council to cover for Yuki. Maria gets excited to meet him and introduces herself as Aliyah's big sister and council secretary. Masashika asks if she needs help with her shopping, but Maria tells him not to be so formal since he's friends with Aliyah. She grabs his hands and says it's a pleasure, but something about it seems strangely familiar to her. Maria asks what his first name is, and when he tells her, she realizes something, but after hesitating, she apologizes for freezing and says it's nice to meet Aliyah's friend. She then switches to Russian and tells him to get going, but Masashika asks what that meant. She repeats herself correctly in Japanese and greets the president goodbye. Later they go shopping for office supplies when Maria loses focus on a cute plushie and suggests getting one for each council member. Masashika assures her Kenzaki will die a virgin if she does that, so they agree to can the idea, but she insists on getting one just for herself. After they walk back, and Masashika pities Aliyah for having such a chaotic sister. They get to their next stop, and he offers to hold the plushie, so Maria names it after Aliyah and tells him they look good together. They head into the tea shop, where Maria gets busy with the store owner while Masashika stands aside, realizing that Yuki would be better at this since their mother taught her. He remembers how his father broke the news of their divorce when he was a kid, so Masashika chose to go with his dad while Yuki chose to stay with their mom. Maria snaps him out of his "that's so Raven" moment and sees that he looks like he's in pain. She gives him a hug and pats his hair, which feels shockingly familiar and calming for him, till she burns him with a hot tea and ruins the moment. Later, Masashika and Maria return to the student council room, and Kanzaki tells her not to leave her creepy demon plushie behind. They hand him the supplies they got, and when he takes a look, he thanks Masashika for stopping Maria from turning the office to 5 Nights at Freddy's. On that note, he asks Masashika if he'd be joining the student council, but Masashika insists that he'd rather watch paint dry, but he wouldn't mind helping out sometimes. Maria suggests he could just join on paper, making Masashika wonder why they're so hell-bent on getting him to join anyway. In return, Kanzaki asks why he'd rather get drink sewer water than join, suspecting there's something more going on. Kanzaki reminds him how he was the GOAT when he was VP in middle school, but Masashika says he didn't have goals worthy of the position. Kanzaki tells him he's nothing special and reveals that he only became the president just to pull a baddie that was out of his league. This surprises Masashika, so Kanzaki pulls out a picture of a land whale and shows it to him. When Masashika wonders who it is, Kanzaki reveals it was him 2 years ago. Masashika says he looked like he ate his twin brother, and Kanzaki admits that he was a lazy bum on top of it. However, everything changed when he fell for a 10/10 that would never look at Jabba the Fat twice. That's when Masashika realizes the nerd managed to pull Chizaki with presidential Reese. Kanzaki points out that even Maria joined because Chizaki asked her to, so Maria pleads guilty as charged and explains that it doesn't matter why you join as long as you work in favor of the students. Kanzaki then tells him that he and Yuki made a great team in middle school, and Masashika has nothing to be ashamed of. At this, Masashika remembers the good old days with his sister. Kanzaki spots this and assures him it would be fine if he joined just to make someone else president. Masashika promises to think about it, so Kanzaki and Maria move on to something else while Masashika wonders if he really wants to make someone president. When he asks where Alia is, Kanzaki says she's off settling a dispute between the baseball and soccer teams. Apparently, both teams have asked for permission for the school field to practice for upcoming events. The soccer team has qualified for regionals while the baseball team has pro scouts coming to observe. Normally, Chizaki would be in charge of settling disputes, but this time, she's away on officially convenient duties, so he sent Alia, who seems to be having trouble with it. Hearing this, Masashika decides to see if the groups are fighting. Meanwhile, the baseball and soccer teams are right in the middle of a stare-off while Alia watches. The guys argue over whose match is more important, but when Alia tries to chime in, the soccer team asks what her bright idea is. Alia suggests they use the Riverside Park to practice, so the soccer team tries to throw it to the baseball team, but they refuse to budge. However, both of the team captains remain suspiciously quiet along with the management team. As the boys continue to argue, Alia starts to realize she's shit at this. That promise she made to herself all those years ago was finally coming to bite her in her well-rounded peaches. Since she's basically been a bitch to everyone, no one would ever want to listen to her. As she begins to cry, she switches to Russian to ask for help. Just then Masashika pops in and announces that he's now the in charge of Student Council General Affairs and is there to help. A few seconds ago, Masashika had walked up and heard the teams barking at each other, while Maria struggled to calm them down. He knew Alia's approach was doomed to fail, but he figured it was good experience, and was really going to pretend he didn't see nothing. However, he suddenly heard her asking for help in Russian, and it was a sound his simp ears just couldn't resist. Both teams recognize Masashika from his middle school tenure, so Masashika offers up a compromise. The baseball team would practice Riverside, since they had fewer members, but in exchange the soccer team would send over some members to help with the process. The boys begin to object and Alia tries to calm them, but Masashika simply looks toward the management team. Suddenly, the head manager offers to have her team help out, so the baseball guys do a complete 180 and accept, hoping it hits something other than a home run. The boys finally settle the dispute and Masashika closes the matter, asking them to file official requests the next day, while Alia stares in surprised Pikachu. Afterward, they head back to the office and Masashika apologizes for butting in and making her look bad. Alia lets it slide, but asks why he made that proposal, almost as if he knew the soccer manager would offer to volunteer. Masashika is surprised that Alia managed to notice, so she points out that he was staring at her the whole time. That's when Masashika explains that the manager is actually dating the baseball team's captain. Of course, Alia wouldn't notice since she was too busy monologuing, but the baseball captain hadn't said a word the entire time because he was trying to help his girlfriend, but also had to keep his priorities straight. Masashika knew the manager would jump at the proposal and everyone would get a happy ending. The baseball team could lose focus on free giats, the soccer team could kick each other's balls, and the lovebirds could hit when no one was looking. Masashika spots Kanzaki, who asks them how it all went. Alia says Masashika worked his magic, so Kanzaki commends them, but Masashika calls him out on setting the whole thing up. Kanzaki admits to the allegations and asks if Masashika has finally made up his mind. Masashika commits to swallowing nails and stepping on Legos just to join the student council, so Kenzaki invites him to the office to get started. Later, Olia and Masashika head home while Masashika laments getting played by yet another anime glasses guy. Olia asks if he's joining the council just to run with Yuki for council president, so Masashika asks if she'd give up on being president if he was. However, Olia insists that she'll never back down, even if it means going up against him. Masashika figured she'd say that, so he offers to make her student council president. Olia looks surprised, but Masashika assures her that if that's what she wants, he'll stand with her, and for her so he stretches out his hand. Olia wipes her tears away and takes his hand, and he announces they're officially a team. However, Olia says something in Russian that reminds him of the Goldilocks from his memory. The familiar feeling makes him smile until he realizes Elia's cutting off the circulation in his hand. Olia asks if he was thinking about another girl, making Masashika realize he's committed one of the sins of the sacred confession scene. She asks if he was thinking about Yuki after promising to be there for her, but even though Masashika denies it, Alia's only way to move forward is to leave a palm print on his face. Afterward, she stretches her hand to help the idiot up. On the way home, Masashika brags that his steez has increased from the slap, but Alia roasts him for having a barely functioning brain. When they arrive at Alia's building, she asks if he's lost feeling in his cheek, but Masashika claims that he's fine. Just then, Alia moves closer and kisses his cheek, shocking him. Alia wonders why he's so surprised, but Masashika can't figure out if that was just cheek to cheek. Alia leaves with zero answers, making Masashika wish she told him what she did in Russian. It turns out that Alia had actually told Masashika she loved him in Russian earlier, and now she's having a full-on meltdown. Even if she loved him, which she refuses to admit, he'd probably just laugh in her face that she confessed. As Alia continues to fight her pillow demon, she hears the door close. When she checks, she sees Maria sitting down, looking like something's bothering her. However, when Alia asks what it is, Maria pulls out the plushie and distracts her with it. As she walks away, she mentions meeting Masashika and understanding why Alia would fall for his ruse. Alia once again denies the allegation, so Maria advises her to confess quickly before someone else steals him away from her. Could this be the start of a love triangle? Comment presidential ruse if you want to find out in the next part. And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video over here.